It's my distinct pleasure to introduce Josep Ferrando. He is an architect practicing in Barcelona and a founding partner of Josep Ferrando Architecture. He's also the dean of the Escuela Técnica Superior de Arquitectura, La Salle, Barcelona. His practice is a dynamic combination of teaching, of profession, and cultural activities. And I'll just describe a few of these. His work has been exhibited internationally, really all over the world, including the Architectural Biennial in Venice of 2014, the Aedes Gallery in Berlin, and the Museum of Modern Art in Rio de Janeiro. He's also developed an intense teaching career in parallel with practice, mainly at the Escuela Técnica Superior de Arquitectura de Barcelona, as well as the Escuela Técnica Superior de Arquitectura La Salle. He's also taught extensively in Buenos Aires in South America at the UTDT, and he has lectured at Harvard, the GSD, Cornell, La Católica in Santiago, at University of Illinois, Chicago, and the list goes on. I should mention that Josep has received quite a list of international recognition and awards. His study on collective housing, developed in the Housing in the City course at the ETSAB, was rewarded with the 2016 City of Barcelona Award. And Josep was also the winner of the FAD Awards. He won first prize at the International Architectural Biennial of Buenos Aires, and also was a finalist at the Iakov Chernikov International Award. We are deeply honored to have Josep Ferrando here with us today. Thank you, Josep, and I pass it over to you.
Thank you a lot, Ben, for this kind introduction, and thanks to everybody for being today here, but especially to the Dean Nader Terani, because it's a pleasure for me and an honor to lecture in Cooper Union, that what has been a reference as a school since I was studying since the 90s. So it's a pleasure, and I'm proud of being with you to share some of my projects. And especially thanks to Lorena to organize this series of lecture and to invite me again, that we have been meeting and introducing, meeting in different and several places around the world. So I'm very happy that we have this opportunity again. So let me share this the screen. So the title of the lecture is Inhabited Infrastructures. So in fact, for me, infrastructure is the fundamental facilities or the fundamental systems in order that a place can be used, so inhabit. No? So for me, when I'm talking about the inhabited infrastructures, it's like talking about flexible systems, but rigorous systems rather than rigid, and rigorous flexibility rather than random. So it's not related to the rigidity of systems or related to the random of flexibility. No, it's just the opposite. It's the rigorosity of both words together. So in fact, I like always to begin with this image of a nest. And normally when I ask who this nest looks beautiful, normally when I ask that to the audience, there's a lot of people raising the hand, no? Like feeling that this is a beauty or is showing or an example of beauty, you know. But normally when I ask who thinks that the bird wanted to design something beautiful, nobody raises the hand. No? And this is the kind of beauty that I'm interested on. No? It's a beauty that is related to the knowledge. It's not directly related to the taste or subjectivity. It's a very knowledge that is related to the objectivity. And for me, this nest and this beauty is related to three keywords that are monomateriality. So the idea of working with only one material in order to learn from the material, in order to understand that the material is your partner, because it's the one that is telling you if it works better as a compression or traction or whatever. But at the same time, it's the way of understanding that the material is not skin, is not a surface of the space, it's the space itself. And even the structure can inhabit the space. No? The second word would be geometry. So the idea of working by geometry. So in that case, the bird is like assembling these branches in a geometric way with these circles in order that they don't need to use other materials like glue or screws or whatever. So working by geometry, you can generate space. You don't need to work in another direction. And the third one would be efficiency. So there is non-waste, there's no waste material. So it's zero waste material in that case. And a part of that is efficient because it's collecting the branches close to the place he wants to build it. So with these small branches, they are always more or less similar. Like when we work with industrial elements that we use to work with the dimensions that the industry is giving us. So in that case, the bird is using these elements. And finally, when the nest is not used, this nest will fall down and will be organic compost. And then there will be another tree with another branches, with another nest, with another birds, etc. So these three words, efficiency, geometry, and monomateriality, are related for me to the knowledge of and objectivity, in terms of objectivity, that I wanted to transmit. In that sense, I will explain today three groups of projects, 3 per 3, so 9 projects. I will try to have time to explain these groups. And the first one is like ephemeral infrastructures. The second one will be domestic infrastructures, and the third one will be public infrastructures. So I will begin with the ephemeral infrastructures. We have one project in a urban landscape, the second one in a natural landscape, and the third one inside an existing infrastructure. The first one is an installation that we made with students from La Salle, and another professor, Eugenie Bach, and a guest professor that was Urbano's office from Shenzhen. And it was a pavilion, a ephemeral pavilion that should be 3 months in front of the Cathedral Square in Barcelona. And it was in the 2013, 2014. And we had to build something related to the word identity. We took the word identity as the architectural and construction identity of Barcelona. And Barcelona had different ages in terms of identity. It was the Roman 2,000 years ago, the Roman city, later the medieval city, and nowadays we have the contemporary city. No? Everyone was more or less shown in different, or with some different kind of shapes or constructions. Roman city was related to the Roman aqueduct, but at the same time with the Cardus Recumanus, so all the organization of the cities. The medieval area was related to the Catalan vault, okay? And the contemporary city was related to the ensanche, the enlargement, no? Designed by Cerdà. So the idea was to build something very abstract, that is this black piece that we see here, that's 20 meters long per 6 meters wide, that is just located in the place where the former Roman wall was located. And it's just in the door of the Decumanus entrance. So what we decided to do is something to do the piece as simple as possible, that is able to recognize or to be like assembled in different ways in order to show these 3 things: the aqueduct, the vault, and the idea of grid related to the ensanche by Cerdà. But first of all, what I was trying to transmit always to the students that we were deciding together and building that together is that what means ephemeral. No? For me, there are 3 things that are crucial. The first one is that when something is ephemeral, you should touch as less as possible the place where this piece will be. No? That means no foundations, for example, etc. No? The second one is the idea of circular economy. No? So what is ephemeral is the use, but this material is coming from some place and should be going to another place to be used in a different use, for example. No? And the third one is the material efficiency. So to use the material as it is without waste material. No? That's the piece as simple as possible. That was a piece of 40 centimeters per 4 centimeters per 1 centimeter with some cuts on the limits, in order that this geometry, this asymmetric geometry that is 4 per 1, allow us that when you assemble these pieces, the next piece is providing 3-dimensionality. These are the minimum pieces that we should have in order to to have an inner space, because always the idea is this idea about generating some kind of a domesticity or inhabited places. So it's not only a place that you see, so it's a place that you inhabit. So it's always like a cave inside the nest. So is that here we can see there's the pieces and how these asymmetric pieces are assembled, provide us the way how the piece touches ground, and provide us some irregular perimeter that allow that didn't allow the people to climb. That was some of the worries from the city hall. You see from that side, you see the aqueduct following the former aqueduct that we have on the left side, and on the other side was like the Catalan Vault where they organized different events during the 3 months that was that thing here. On the right side, we see the people inside. No? So it's like this kind of cave that you can inhabit, not only to cross or to cross in attempts in a visual way or physical way, even you can inhabit. No? So as you see that in order to touch as less as possible that place, all these elements are touching in a several points the ground in order to share the loads. So in order that you don't need foundations or whatever, but at the same time to have the enough weight to not be possible to move by hands or by the wind. The way it touches ground is the only piece that is different. It's a stainless steel piece. In order that this one is the one with the screw, that this is the one that calibrate the land. So as you know, this public space is always with inclinations. And then what happens here is that this stainless steel piece is providing an horizontality for the pavilion, but at the same time is separating the wood, which is the material of this installation, from the white area of the floor. After 3 months, all these pieces in different groups were moved to different kindergartens of the city. And when the kids destroyed this kindergarten, this kind of playgrounds that they made, these things were moved to be used as a organic compost. This is another installation that ephemeral installation in Ocho Quebradas. It's 8 cliffs that is in northwest areas of Chile, 3 hours by car from Santiago de Chile, more or less. In that case, a person, an engineer that is is organizing a new housing community with 16 houses. 8 houses designed by 8 Japanese architects like Fujimoto, Nishizawa, Ishigami, etc. And 8 houses designed by 8 Chilean architects, Alejandro Aravena, Max Núñez among them. And the guy who's organizing all this thing asked me to design a door, a threshold, in order to arrive to that place. That's a place. This is the plan with the 16 houses. None of the houses were built when I was asked to design the door of that place. They were sending me some images like this one. So it's called Ocho Quebradas, 8 cliffs, because this fragmented coast. So it's in the desert in front of the ocean. When they were sending me these images, the first thing that I was asking is that where they wanted to have the door. They were answering what I want. So this is the worst answer that you can receive as an architect. So it was difficult to define or to decide where to put the door. No? But one of because I was always worried about how to do something that is related to the domesticity of the existing houses that will be built on the future, but at the same time, it's how something is related to the landscape scale, why we don't have these houses. No? And then in some of the pictures that they sent me, there is this kind of more or less these train tracks that are erased because of the time. So it was a train that wasn't working anymore in that place. So it was great because I decided to put something above, like becoming some kind of basement or becoming the carpet of the project, in order to understand that the train tracks are the ones that are related to the landscape scale. So this is like a basement because it's horizontal. And it's connecting all the city from south to north. So it's like doing a project, no? That is occupying all the country. In that moment, I decided to begin to work in this kind of ephemeral project that is like is related to the idea of movement. Okay, so it's related to the idea of wind. I was researching Graham Bell and this kind of gates that he was designing at the end of the 19th century. Always, again, working with geometry, with the repetition of small pieces, as we have seen in the previous project that was 8,000 times the same piece. In this one, the one that we're talking now, will be 800 times the same piece. Or even I was researching Leonardo da Vinci, no? Checking how a wheel is not only a one wheel. So a wheel, in order to work, you have to work with a wheel made of wheels. So there are wheels that are multiplying the speed. There are wheels that are changing the direction. There are wheels that are collecting energy, etc. So finally, what I designed is this wheel of wheels. It's a wheel made of 8 wheels that is made of 800 times the same piece. In order to work with a double system that needs a wheel, that means a radial system from the center and a tangential system on the perimeter, I was changing 8 times the angle of this kind of diamond. So you have the diamond that is changing 8 times the angle in order that's becoming from radial to tangential system. And there are only some joints on steel joints that are connecting the pieces in order that you have always the pieces, the wooden pieces equal, and the steel pieces are the ones that are changing the wire. There was another challenge, is that this now friend asked me that this piece should be built with 50 students. So after designing that should be built with 50 students. So what we made is that this very like raw construction with 2 scaffoldings, one following the other one, with a crane and a pulley, with the axis of the wheel, in order that you could build the wheel on the floor. So the only thing that you have to do is that to make the first spring, and then you pull up, and then you do the second spring, etc. And then the smaller wheels could be done or could be built on the floor and then put it. These are the 4 wheels on the floor. And finally, the wheel is 6 meters of diameter, so the more or less is related to a double height. So you feel that is even some kind of a domestic scale, but at the same time it has the scale to go through. So the train tracks became a pathway to arrive, and the wheel became a door. I decided to put the initial point of the wheel just in between these 2 dunes in order to perceive that the wheel is bigger than the train tracks. But when you see these train tracks from far away, it's different. No? We can see the dot, the wheel as a dot in the middle of this. So finally, the project is all the train tracks, but the construction is only the wheel. And the location is changing constantly. So after this question that I was giving to the client, no, where I should put the door, finally I answer whatever, no, you want, because the wheel was able to be moved in different places. So the door could be changing constantly. And the third one of this first group is a ephemeral installation from last year, 2019, in Barcelona. In that case, Barcelona organized every 2 years a fair about construction. This is one of the most well-known fairs in Europe about construction. And as you know, always on the fairs is plenty of stands, a lot of stands, everyone with its own brand and products, etc. But the organization was organizing a competition to build and to design the common areas. You have to think that this is an event that with a duration of 3 days, only 3 days. The space for common areas, that means the space for lectures, etc., is 3,000 square meters, and the amount of material that you need for this construction is more or less 20,000 square meters of material that every 2 years they threw out after 3 days. So one of the, for me, one of the things that was important in this case was how you can work with a zero waste material, and at the same time, how are you using this material later, or even if this material is coming from another place. On the other hand, I was thinking that these places should have some kind of monumentality. That is not easy, because if the stands are, so if you think that the fair is more or less like a city, the stands are like the houses, so the common areas are like the theaters, cinemas, etc. In that case, it needs some kind of a facility scale, but it's not easy because you're not able to screw on the floor, or you're not able to have foundations, because that means that every week they will remake the floor. So the only way of having monumentality, so a space, is to hang it and to spend as money as possible. And the other thing is that as this is a construction fair, I wanted to work in a very didactic way in terms of understanding that everything on the construction is related to the traction, hanging, light, etc., or compression, stacking, weight, etc. So I was using only two materials. So I was talking with a geotextile company. So the geotextile is this kind of textile fibers that you use as a layer inside the roof. And you can use it in different weights, to understand if you want to have more weight or lighter or weighter, but at the same time to be more transparent or less transparent. So I was choosing this kind of 180 grams. And in order to define the spaces, and in order to define the human scale, I was using these steel profiles. So I was talking with La Sagrada Familia, with the team that is in charge of the construction of La Sagrada Familia by Gaudí. And I was asking them if they could lend me these steel profiles during 3 days. These are the pieces that they use to move the prefab concrete pieces of the facade of La Sagrada Familia. And they lend me these pieces. And the same for the rolls. So I was asking for this, for the geotextile, I'm going back. These are always coming in rolls of 2 meters wide per 200 meters long. So I was working in catenaries in order to optimize the space, the length of these elements in order to unroll it as a space and to roll it later. So finally, I obtained all the material to make the space and all the material to make the furniture for free and with waste material. This is the axon of the space that it was called talks, the space for lectures. There's the space for meetings and for the future. So I will focus in the talks. So if we check that place, know that when you work inside another place, that's because I was talking that this one is inside another building, like a Congress building, no? You have to understand always that you are embedded in another place. So you have to take care of the rhythms of that place. So always these horizontal gray darker lines are the trusses that depends on the rhythm of the structure. But at the same time, these trusses are always separated 4 meters because it's the distance of 2 rolls. But at the same time, the rolls are always having these catenaries related to the rhythm of the triangular shape of the trusses. No? So everything is very, very connected and embedded in order that finally it seems that nothing happened. In order to enter, it's always the idea of door, no? And the idea of entering is not crossing a door, it's the idea of approaching to a place, and then how you enter to a place for a lecture, coming from a place, from a building that inside has to 12 meters height. So from 12 meters height, you pass to the 6 meters height. That is the upper part of these catenaries. So everything was hanging from 6 meters height. And then you go down, 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 and then you have 2 meters, and then you cross, no? You have this sensation, no? You have this process from 12 to 6 to 2, and then you turn 90 degrees, and then you begin to enter to that place. That is the space for the lectures. That was some of the images. That was, obviously didn't happen like this because not all the beams were equal. So finally what I decided with the beams is to group the beams in colors and in lengths. And then the idea is to have, as they work as a beams, to have the longer ones in the upper part and the shorter ones in the lower part in order to work as a beams. as you will see later. This is the space behind for the VIP area, for the people that were giving the lectures. And this is more or less some pictures of the construction. So this is the same track that it was coming from Sagrada Familia. They put these pieces in a way that we were asking. So we were designing and thinking the same times of the construction. That's a construction of this piece for the talks that is 40 meters per 40 meters with all the trusses related to the structure, cables, and everybody doing that. No? So finally, when they finish that, they move up. The trucks enter with the beams. They put the beams, and then we move down again. No? This again under construction. And this built. No? So you can see here how the beams were selected per colors, and later they were selected per size. And then the shorter ones were on the lower part in order to work as a beam, no, with cantilevers. So the last ones are like almost 20 meters and 1 ton weight. And they were stacked in order to define levels of benches or levels of tables or level of bars. So know with the shapes of that, with the levels of that. With some small joints in between in order to build it, so to stack it, to be able to stack with toros, no? I mean, and to be able to remove. But it generates this kind of labyrinth. So obviously there were 2 entrances, but a lot of people, they were entering even through that place. And as this is soft, you suggest to cross in that way. So the people that were crossing in that direction, every 2 pieces, so every 4 meters, the module of the catenary was moving half of the module in order that you weren't able to see directly in that direction. That's the auditorium, no? And that's the VIP area. So finally, after 3 days, they roll it again, as I said, and now they are used in different roofs, etc. And the beams are again in La Sagrada Familia. In fact, 4 blocks from here. I'm going to domestic infrastructures. I will talk about 3 houses very fast, but again, one is in the landscape, and another one is more like in a urban space, and the other one is inside another house. This is a house that for the same client in 8 Cliffs, and he asked me to design a house, mainly in wood, but finally I did everything in wood. But in that case was a house for nowhere, for no one. So it was a house for no client and for no place in that area, but in no place. No? And then in the same area as we're seeing here. So the house that I did is that one. So it's a house that is bidirectional. It's a square because it doesn't have location. So it will have the location in terms of how you use it. And the second thing is that how you do a house that is for everybody and for nobody, you know. So it's a holiday house or weekend house. So what I did is a square that is made of 9 squares that is called 8+1 because there's one that is the only one that you are not able to change. That is the one in the middle. So in that case, it's a very vernacular house, but because it's 8 squares surrounding around 1 square in the middle, that is the fire, is the kitchen. So it's very vernacular in that way, in that sense. No? And the 8 that are surrounding that piece are defined by these blocks that are wooden blocks. In fact, this one is it has wet facilities, so water facilities on a storage space. So in a way of having a non-hierarchical space, not undefined spaces, and you can occupy that places as you prefer. No? So that means that you can have like we're seeing here, no? In the lower part, like 2 single bedrooms, and the upper part, 1 master bedroom or dining, living, and always the kitchen inside. And then the question is that instead of having a room for the bathroom, is to have a plurinuclear bathroom, right? To have the toilet in one place, the shower in another place, the sink in another place. And the idea is that space that is here, no? The space that is like like a cross inside the square, is to work like Marcel Duchamp in his studio. No? It's like a door with 2 halls. No? So depending how you open the door, you're closing one space and incorporating one to another one, etc. No? So you can inhabit the house as you want. I was putting some conditions that I wanted to have like the 4 corners to be an open room, so not an inside room, in order to understand that this is a house that is not provoking like convexities to the landscape. It's only always like embracing, like provoking concavities to the landscape. And as you see here, the floor is a grid, it's a wooden grid that would be above 4 big beams, concrete beams, that will be the ones in charge of separating the wood from the floor, but at the same time, the ones of organizing some kind of horizontality in that area. No? And again, there's some kind of assembling spatial system, no? So you're living in some kind of a joint of wood. And in this exteriority, no, that the pavilion tries to be like an unfinished project. It seems like an unfinished construction or like a ruin, no, in some way. The corners are occupied by the vegetation, but at the same time, the idea of having elements that you feel that you're inside, outside, no, like the swing, no? So you're swinging up, down, and then you feel like you're inside the house, etc. So always providing this idea that in a weekend house, a house could be different. No? So depending on the location, on the orientation, you will choose how you put the bedrooms, rooms, etc., or depending on your domesticity. No? And the idea is to have always the house next to a existing stone, in order that the stone became the anchor of the house, but at the same time is the stairs of the house. So the house increased the perception of having a bigger house through 2 mechanisms. One is the idea of diagonalizing the space. So it's always, you have diagonals in every direction. And the second method is that you have to have always like an endless circulations. No? So because as you have these elements isolated, the baths, etc., you can go around constantly. No? And finally, the space in between the kitchen has an Edfer roof in order that you feel that you're cooking outside, but you are inside. So this is the only piece that is not able to be moved. So it's a house around a fire. Of the house, the 4 beams, 4 concrete beams will allow you to have this horizontality, etc. In Asunción, Paraguay, we're just finishing a house. That is that one is 2 beams. It's like a big table, like 2 beams inside an enclosure, a brick enclosure. And this is the landscape of Paraguay. So it's always like it's very nice because it's called Tierra Colorada. It's like a red color earth, and it's a beautiful color. And you find this kind of constructions on the roads, always with brick, red brick, etc. And this is what is called culata jovai, is the typical house or vernacular house, because Paraguay has most of the year is very humid and with high temperatures. And normally the house works like this. So you have 2 bedrooms separated with a living room and a roof with a pitch roof that provides that the hot air is going up. And then you have this kind of cross ventilation. So we were trying to work in the same way to have like the bedrooms and the rooms on the side. You know that you have always this kind of circulation, like air circulation, and being able to be close or not, okay? But at the same time to avoid corridors. So that's the house. So in fact, the house is inside an enclosure for security, but at the same time because the enclosure, the brick enclosure, is the one that has the servant, some of the servant areas. And finally, the house are 2 beams with a roof. There will be a green roof. That is the one that will allow you to be like a flying carpet, like floating in between the park that is in front of the house and the park that is in the other side of the house. So you are like in some kind of a green carpet or green flying carpet among two elements. So by security, you are close, but at the same time, on the upper part of the house, you are connected with the rest of the landscape. And as you see here, you can open totally, you can see through, etc. And there are only 2 brick blocks, that they contain the bathrooms, 1 bathroom for 1 room and the other bathroom for the other room. But at the same time, the 2 brick boxes are containing the fire. So one is the fire to cook, and the other one is the fire to heat. So in some months in winter that is a little bit cooler, they have this fire. So if the house in 8 Cliffs was a house surrounding the fire, this is a house in between 2 fires. And now we'll see. So here we can see the enclosure and only 2 beams. So there's a house that has like a house of brick with 2 boxes of brick and 2 elements. This is the house under construction in the last months. And this in Asunción, Paraguay. And again, as we saw in how they were stacking the bricks to cook the bricks with brick ovens, we were using exactly the same techniques here. So with the box inside is a box solved in the same way that you can find in the brick ovens on the path. No? So from outside, the only thing that you will see is this kind of a brick fence. And here in the upper part, we will see how it appears, the concrete platform. That finally this concrete platform would be a green roof floating in between these 2 green spaces. And the last domestic scale is a house inside the house. It was built like 5 years ago, more or less. It's a house that we'll see is in that place. So it's in front of the monastery. So we had to leave to maintain the main facade and even the roof, because it was the surroundings of this very nice monastery. So the house is that one that we see here with the light on the right side. So we had to maintain this facade. So the idea was to have like a house inside the house in order that to maintain some kind of distance in between them that provides light to the lower part, for example, that was without light before the intervention. And to take advantage of these small holes to provide light inside, more or less reflecting or inspired by these pictures by the artist Marcus Book, where we can see the footprint of all houses like becoming inside new houses or existing houses. So we're taking advantage of these pictures by Marcus Book in order to understand the language of us. And for us, what's really important, the idea of not understanding the new house as a stacking slabs, is as a new space inside the old space. That's the house. So the house is a house made of brick concrete pieces, so precast pieces, sorry, and with wooden houses inside. As you can see, the slabs are in different levels, you can see always through. The pieces are always next to the floor, next to the facades in order to have light, in order to generate some kind of a void inside that becomes the aura or the space among all the spaces of the house. So there are only 2 materials, wood, concrete, inside the ceramic existing house. As you can see, the house is moved and it generates two kind of party walls. It's a very narrow house. It's a space of 4.5 meters. But instead of having the stairs in transversal direction, I exaggerated the longitudinality in order to play with the perception as the 8+1 house. So the stairs are in the longitudinal direction in order that you are always like entering in the party wall. So there's a party wall that instead of having 20 centimeters, it has 90 centimeters. So you are entering the wall to go to another level. And then this idea that you are inside the wall, that you feel that you are really, really in a narrow place, makes that when you arrive in the wooden areas, you feel that the space is lighter and much bigger than they are. And in the other side, we have another party wall that is 40 centimeters wide, that is space for storage and energy circulation. So these are all the floors, and we go directly to this. So you're always circulating in that area, so there are no more stairs than that ones. That ones are always in between bricks. Here we can see how there are windows that they are facing the new house to the left, and they're facing to the ancient house of a former house to the left, to the right. And then you arrive to that places and you feel that these places are much bigger because the comfortability, but because you have passed first previously to that other places. But even these kind of rooms that we have seen like in archetypes, like houses, are houses because as you are seeing always these houses from a higher level, a point of level, it's better to have that cleaner and to understand that not as a roofs, not as a terraces, as a roofs. But at the same time, when for example, the kids are opening the window, the room became a window of the kids, because they open and then you provide light here. Or the shape of the bathroom with this archetype, with the pitched roof, provides that the joint between the old house and the new house provides light to the core of the house. So this is the core of the house, which is the kitchen, and it's the space without windows. But you have a lot of natural light because all the spaces are shaping the light to provide light to this kind of an inner space. Well, and finally, and faster, is public infrastructure. So 3 buildings that we're working on. The first one is in Buenos Aires. It's a competition that we won like 3 years ago, more or less, a restricted competition that we're participating, Petzo, Bonrichhausen, Iñaki Avalos, etc. And we won the competition to enlarge the University of Torquato di Tella, with a 15,000 square meters. And what they were asking for the campus is a building that would be very flexible inside with classrooms and offices. And we decided to have like a bar that is more or less repeating the cluster shape of the campus. And this bar is 60 meters long per 20 meters wide. And there are no columns inside and no installation inside. So the idea was to have like a tripartita facade, like that one, where you have a white elements or white, more separated structure on the floor in order to provide some kind of common spaces. The next 2 floors are the floors for classrooms, and the next 3 are for offices and the terrace. So what we're seeing here in the facade is an inverted structure, but at the same time, the structure is the pattern of subdivision that we can have inside. So again, this idea about that the flexibility is not random. So the upper module is 2.6, which is the minimum module for an individual office. The classrooms are 2 times that, so 5.2. That is the minimum piece for a small group classroom. And the lower part is 3 times that in order to have the minimum piece for a cafeteria, for example. So in fact, the facade is the pattern of that. But the thickness of the facade is almost 2 meters in order that we have all this, the mechanicals in that place. So in one side of the structure is always the electrical elements, and the other one, the other side, the air conditioning elements. So everything, so when you're going up, the structure is becoming smaller because you have more structure and less loads. But the mechanical are in the opposite ramification. So the air conditioner is coming from above, and as it's going down, it's becoming smaller. So if you see the thick facade of almost 2 meters, what you're seeing is how the structure is becoming smaller and how the mechanicals are doing exactly just the opposite. So everything is happening in this facade, in order to have an empty space if you need it, or to have a divided space if you need it. Everything was built, so this structure was built in concrete, in situ, and all the pieces, all the pieces that are on the facade are prefab, pre-industrialized pieces made by aluminum and steel, so that you can build it in the industry and then apply it in that place, like this kind of pieces by Jean Prouvé for the Freie Universitat. So everything is, all the pieces of steel are like applied or hanging, as you will see later. The main stairs are hanging in order to show how the concrete is the only one that is sustaining the building. It's the only one that touches ground with 8 columns, only 8 columns. And then everything that is steel is working by traction. So again, like concrete compression, steel traction. And finally, there is the third material that is the one that organizes the inside spaces that are like modular wooden furniture, or wooden storage areas, etc., that organize the space in between. So this is the campus. So here we have some kind of frames that exist. And this former like a water tank with these columns and very nice. So the idea was how to work more or less with the same kind of a structural personality. So here we were working again with the idea of columns and frames. No? So with this 20 meters long frame and the columns becoming some kind of a tree formal way. So you can see the plan. So this is the ground floor, the first and second, and the third, fourth, and fifth. And everything is organized in order to have the mechanicals and everything here. But again, no, as we saw in the ephemeral intervention in Construmat, everything is related to embedded rhythms. No? So these 15.60 meters that we can have in the ground floor, if we go here, no, is related to the dimension that we have in the entrance of this former building. So everything is related, or this dimension is related to the four elements that we have here. Or as we'll see, this kind of porch that we have here is related to that one. So in ground floor, the facade is moved back in order to have a continuity of this. No? In order to be related to the scale of that building and the scale of that one. So the emptiness, the void of that one is related to the lower part, and the massiveness of the new one is related to the old one. Here we can see. So this is a thick facade that contains everything. Well, this is a facade that we have been working with the renderings for the competition. This under construction in Buenos Aires. And now it's finished. As we can see, so the structure is the pattern of flexibility. These are another pictures from under construction, and we can see how we have these 20 meters concrete beams. And from these elements, the stairs, for example, are hanging from 25 meters height. They're hanging and not touching ground. No? So when they arrive to the ground, they are not touching, in order to understand or to explain how these things are related to the rest of the materials. No? Inside, no, how you organize these things are related to the or organized with wood. These are the most fragmented room or floor, sorry. And when you are in the upper part, here now it's like just growing this glycina. So in some months we will have like some kind of a red-blue color like hanging in that place, in order to have some kind of shadows. And again, the repetition of this structure every 2.6 meters provide us this kind of pictures, a smaller picture or continuous pictures of Buenos Aires. I think I will pass that fast. If not, we won't have time. This was a competition that we obtained the second place in Mendoza. That is a very amazing city for wine in Argentina. It was a building inside an existing building. So we had to put some kind of houses, offices, and commercial spaces inside an industrial building. And we organized that existing building. We only removed the skin of the existing building in order to be transparent, but at the same time to be some kind of protection from the climate, because it's a climate with 15 degrees of difference in one day. So that was like some kind of protection, some kind of like skin in order to protect the new building inside. As you can see here, the winter conditions and summer conditions, in order to have some kind of Mediterranean climate in a building inside a place that has another kind of climate. You have to think that this is a space that is a desert, but because all the irrigation system that they organized since 100 years ago, so every street and every sidewalk has an irrigation, a ditch system that allow the city to become some kind of oasis. So the idea was to work in that sense, no? So to use all the irrigation system, we can see that on the right side, to use all the irrigation system of the city in order to irrigate some kind of a vegetation layer in this facade that allow us to have a more humid space in this dry climate. So that was the roof, the space again in between, like in the pictures by Marcus' book, that the space on the roof for common areas and a garden for the citizens of that place. No? And only to finish, the Rio de Janeiro project. There is a project that we finished the executive project some months ago, but because political reasons, it's totally stopped now. It's a pity, because it was a nice place, a nice area. It was just here in a place called Praia da Urca. It's the Urca beach, just in the lower part of the Pau de Açúcar. And it was an old building that was some years ago was refurbished by part of the building was refurbished to become a design university, a design school. They asked me to design or to refurbish the other part that was more or less in ruins. But it's an amazing place because that was it was in the 20s thermal baths. As you can see here, Balneario da Urca, it was during the 20s, but during the 30s it was amazing. It became one of the most famous casinos in Brazil, like Copacabana or Atlántico. And we can see here in the image Walt Disney in that place. Even we can see there's a movie by Walt Disney with Donald Duck and etc. that is happening just in that casino. Or even here we can see, if we remember more or less this shape, we will see it later. But here we can see Orson Welles inside that place. This is the place nowadays. So in the front facade, we can see the building that has been refurbished, but all the other part that is more or less 4,000 square meters is not refurbished. But more or less what I was defending in the project is that this building had 3 moments. Now it's in ruins, but it has 3 important moments: the thermal baths, the casino, but even the destruction. The destruction allow us to have this kind of possibilities now. No? So where we have windows to the sky or windows to another space that is facing another space, no? Or to have some kind of, to understand the building as a sun watch. No? So a lot of opportunities that didn't happen before because everything was too close when it was thermal or when it was a casino. No? But the destruction make appear some other things, no? Like for example, the opening of that place, you can see a stair that is going to 2 places that you don't know where are going, but it's some kind of surprise, but it's allowing us to read another kind of things. Or for example, that space that is next to the auditorium, no? That is it has this big opening now facing the Pau de Açúcar, no? Or how the stairs are becoming a skylight. How you can have an auditorium with a natural light. And then with that attitude, I was defending and finally was approved by the City Hall to make as less as possible, no? And more or less with these strategies like Gordon Bataclar, no? That only opening 4 windows in 4 corners of non-connected rooms provide some kind of connection that weren't before. And the idea was to work only in a very like inspired by Lina Bobardi, no? In a way that how you can do as less as possible in order to fix the ruin. So in order to make it possible to be inhabited. So the idea was to refurbish in a way that the only thing that you can do is to fix this in order to repair the structure or to impermeabilize everything very good. But the idea was to use the same structure that you need to build it to inhabit it later. So to use scaffolding, so all the structures like scaffolding that you are using to refurbish it are the same ones that you are using later to be colonized by the nature, as we can see here in the new entrance that would have this building, or to be, again, colonized, for example, in that place inside, to be colonized by the vegetation, but even for the people, no? So the idea is all this kind of infrastructure to fix, no, and to stop the degradation of that place will be the ones that will organize in the future the colonization of the people, the uses, the models, as we can see in the lower part, etc. So to domestic, the way of converting that in some kind of a public domestic space to the same material that you are using to fix the degradation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josep. Thank you very much. That was an incredible and moving lecture. Right now, we will continue this conversation on a separate call. So please follow the instructions on the screens for the live stream Q&A. Thank you very much.